Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at The Magnificent, which is a 1 to 4 player Euro strategy dice drafting board game designed by Eilif Svensson and Christian A. Ostby. This one takes 60 to 90 minutes to play. Before I get into my review of The Magnificent, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so the main board for The Magnificent is going to look like this, which is divided up into several sections. The first part here on the far left is only going to matter at the end of the round, where you can acquire these new cards and worker placement spots, which are for your personal use. You have these 3 rondelles here, each assigned to a different colour, relating to the dice that you can draft. And we'll talk about what they do, but essentially you'll be travelling them around them in a clockwise manner, collecting gems and potentially collecting these tents, which of course will not mean anything at this point. And you have this performance track here, which is where you can activate some cards that you can collect, which is a big part of the game, but at the moment, again, that's not going to mean anything. You have these worker placement spots, which you can use during your turn. You've got the area, of course, which all the dice are kept, and you also have these performance cards which you can draft and acquire as the game goes on. General resources include these gems, you've got your money, you've got these different tiles which come in 3 different colours, again relating to the dice, and they come in 2 different sizes of each colour. So you've got the small tiles here, and you also have the larger versions of the equivalent colours. Each player is going to have a set of cards that they can play with at the start of the game, and these can change as the game goes on, but you could end up with the same cards at the end of the game should you choose to do that. You have a supply of these workers, which you can kind of acquire as the game goes on. You're going to start with one of them, which goes alongside your personal player board, which is where you are essentially going to be placing those tiles as the game goes on, trying to cover up these symbols and get the bonuses as you go. And you've also got some storage for the gems you collect. So each gem or each gem colour, you can store up to 3 of them, and every one you acquire after that, you will gain a coin, and money is quite a tight resource in this game. And you have up to 3 spots to store personal worker placement places, I suppose. And also you're going to start with a setup card at the beginning of the game here. So as you'd expect with a Euro, the objective of this game is to get as many victory points as you can, and you're generally going to do that by completing these cards here. You can see that the general anatomy of them looks like this, and basically this means that in order to activate this card, I'll need to spend one of these coloured gems. You need to have 2 of these tiles on your personal player board somewhere. And additionally, if you do that and you had a matching tent, which are one of these spots here, then you can potentially cash out and get all the rewards at the bottom. So these are your victory points, and this is cash. Now, a player's turn is actually pretty simple. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to draft one of the dice here. So let's just say, for example's sake, I took this green 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to place it on one of my cards. And when I place it on the card, I have an ability which is on the top half of the card here. So for example, if I place this green 5 here, not only will I get to use this green 5 for an action in a minute, I'll also get a coin and add it to my personal supply. Now, once I've done that, I have 3 choices on how to use that die. So the first of which is to go on these rondelles here, and because I had a 5 and it was a green, I'd have to go to the green rondelle, and then I can move up to 5 spaces around this one, again collecting gems as I do so, or I can choose to stop on a tent. So let's just see how far I can get here. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I actually wanted to, I could go all the way to here. I could collect gems all along the way. So I'd collect one of these ones, one of these ones, and one of these ones. Again, adding them to my player board. And the gems are very useful because they let you boost the strength of your dice, which I'll explain the relevance of in a minute. And if you land on one of those tents, you can claim it for yourself, and you can add it to one of these spaces on your personal player board. So let's just say I put it on this one here, and when I place it down, I'll immediately get the rewards below it. So I'll get 2 coins, and I'll get to take one of these performance cards and place it on one of my spots. So let's just say I took this one here. Now, without thinking what I'm doing, and I placed it above that spot here. Now, this means that this card is eligible to be performed because it has a tent there. However, in order to perform that card, I'll need to acquire these 3 types of tiles and have them somewhere on my player board. And that associates to the second action. So the second action is to build. So let's just say I ended up taking this red 6 in a future turn. Again, I'll place it somewhere on one of these cards. Let's say I did this one here, which would actually boost it to a red 7 now, because that one increases the strength by 1. And you can see here on your player board, you have this little key which shows the different tiles you can make or place depending on the strength of the die you've just taken. So we had a red 7 there, therefore we can go up to the 7 and place 2 small red tiles, because again, red is the colour I drafted. So what I do is I'll take those 2 small red ones like so and place them somewhere on my personal player sheet. Now when I do that, I want to be trying to fill in these boxes, because at the end of the game, every box complete is going to be worth 4 points. But additionally, you can see that below a lot of these spots, you have victory points, money, these wild gems and cards, and even you can unlock more of these helpers. But let's just go for the very simple one here and cover up those 5 points there, and maybe put this one here and cover up those additional 2 points. That would get me 7 points immediately, and I'll be way on my way to completing one of these boxes. And I have this criteria fulfilled now if I come to performing this card. So talking of performing, that is the third choice you can make. So when you perform, as normal, you will draft your die. So let's just say I took this red 4. Again, I would place it on one of these cards, choosing which one to select. Let's say I chose this one here, which would allow me to cash in any gem for 2 coins, should I wish to do so. However, now I have 2 dice of the same colour. The values of those dice will actually compound on each other. So now my strength would be 10, because I have the red 6 and the red 4, creating a total value of 10 red action points, essentially. And let's use that to do the perform action. So when you do that, you're going to have a look at this track here. You can see I've got to 10. Therefore, I'd move my piece all the way up to 10, which means that I can do up to 2 performances. And when I do that, I'm going to have a look again at my cards here, bearing in mind that all these criteria will need to be fulfilled. So I need to have 1 big purple or blue shape here, which I have. You need to have 1 small red, which I have. You need to have 1 big red like this. And you also need to have one of the small blue shapes. So I have all of this completed, and as again, I could do 2 performances, which again, that means I could do 2 cards. As long as I have these all criteria complete, I can fulfill them. So therefore, I could do this card and I could do this card. Now, some of these cards also have an additional fee here, which means I'd have to discard a gem, and some of the tents also mean I need to discard a gem. So therefore, I need to get rid of one of these gems here, and also a purple gem like so. And if I did that, I'll take all the rewards on these cards. So I'll take 3 for 5 coins, another 3 there for 8 coins total, and therefore I'd also take 11 actual points. And that's essentially how you are going to gain victory points. And what you're going to do, once these cards have been completed, you're going to put them in your scoring pile, which can matter for endgame scoring and different kind of scoring methods you get throughout the game. However, the tents themselves are going to remain in place, ready to be used again. Anytime during your turn, you can spend your little helpers to take these worker placement spots and get a bonus for doing so. So for example, this one here, that means that when you perform, you can switch your little performance cards around. So you might want to have certain tents with certain cards. This one here means you can actually break the rule of only being restricted to place the same tiles of the matching color of the dice you've drafted. So you can actually draft 1 dice and place a different tile, for example. That one there lets you buy new cards or pick up new cards from the performance card row. This one here, that means that when you use these rondelles, you can actually travel anti-clockwise around the rondelle. This one here lets you take the reverse side of the die you've drafted. So again, if I wanted to maybe take this die here, I could place my helper on here, flip it over to the reverse side, and therefore I'd have a 6 to play with rather than the 1. And you can also see that each player has their own ones on their personal player board, which they can use at any time. So for example, my one here means that whenever I do a performance, I can use a die at +2 strength, and there are a bunch of other ones that can come into play as the game progresses. So once all the players have done their 4 dice drafts, that is going to conclude one of the 3 rounds. So it's quite a short game. You only get 12 drafts throughout the entire game. You're going to go into a bit of an admin phase where you're going to have a look who's done the highest performance here. And whoever has done the highest performance is going to get first pick when it comes to taking a new card to play with. So let's just say, without thinking about it too much, I'll take this one here. And you'll also take the corresponding bonus tile, which will go on your personal player board, which means only you can use that spot. Now, also, when you take this new card, you've got to add it to your row here, but however, you're always going to be restricted just to have 4 of them. So you're going to have to select one of them, and you're going to have to choose to cash it out. Now, you can see here, the bottom half of the card has a different scoring criteria on it. So for example, let's just say I wanted to select this one here. It means for every coin I cash in right now, I'll get 3 points for it. However, I can do that a maximum of 7 times. But let's just say I wanted to do that. I spent a bit of money and got the corresponding amount of points, and I'll then discard that card, and then I'd have this card to play with now. Now you can see that these all have a bunch of different criteria on them when it comes to scoring. So for example, this one here would mean that my highest pool of dice that I've drafted I'd get a point for each pip on them. And bearing in mind that the see-through ones, these ones here, get added to your grand total of your highest one. So let's just say, for example, I ended up drafting this red 4, a red 3, a green 5, and a clear 6. So this one, you see, it would actually get added onto the 7 here. So this would add a total of 13. Now, a further restriction in this game that the highest pool of dice that you draft at the end of the round, you need to pay a coin for each pip in that lot. So I'd have to spend 13 coins if I wanted to do that, which means that, yeah, it's going to be great to keep drafting the same dice because you get more powerful actions. However, it's going to get more and more costly. Some of the other cards here, you can see that I'm going to get 7 points for each completed row on my player board here, or ones like this, which means I get a point for each square or mini square in a particular color on my player board. So, if I wanted this red one here, that'd be 6 squares completed. Or you can even do ones relating to certain shapes and things. So once everyone's drafted their cards and paid their fees for the highest amount of dice, these are going to drop right back down to the bottom again in a new player order. And then the dice are going to be rolled ready to go again for another round. And again, once 3 rounds have been played, the player with the most victory points will be declared the winner. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on the Magnificent. And we're going to start with some of the mechanical features, starting with the actual dice drafting mechanism here, because there are a lot of dice drafting games out there, but I love the way the Magnificent does something a bit different by the fact that if you keep on drafting the same coloured dice, then you're going to get better and better rewards for doing so. So you can really fly around these tracks, get a bunch of gems, potentially getting the overspill and gaining coins from your supply here. It will let you build more and more buildings based on this track here. You can place a lot of coverage if you get those big numbers. And of course, you can really fly up that performance track and activate many cards with a single action. Absolutely love that. But that is really amplified by the fact that by each time you add to your highest pool of dice, you're going to have to pay an extra coin for it. And money in this game, I think, is perfectly balanced. Because especially at the start of the game, money is not the cash flow isn't massively, advantageous. You have to be very careful with each penny you spend. And I love that kind of thought process and mapping out your turns, thinking, yes, this is going to be expensive for me, but if I pull off this big move, I'm going to activate all these cards and things, and then I'll get the money back anyway, which will pay for itself. So yeah, a perfectly weighted mechanism here with the power of the actions based with the consequence of paying for those actions. Another one of my favourite features about this game is the way the cards work, because not only are these cards useful because they offer you, quick little gains here when you place the die in the first place, you're getting a little boost or getting a certain coloured gem or even money. But the fact that the second half of the card is, massively important when it comes to strategizing and planning out or mapping out your entire game, because you want to be constantly building towards something, and you can think, by the end of the first round, I'll maybe, build a big square, and then by the end of the second round, I'll start building towards the columns of the rows on my player sheet, and so on. So it does add a lot of strategy there, and that added on to the fact that Each round you are going to be replenishing these cards, and based on how well you've performed. So you might think, I really want to fly up this track here, so I get the first dibs of the card that perfectly matches my strategy. Maybe I've got a bunch of these L shapes, and this is the card I want, and I'm maybe going for a purple or blue strategy here. But that merged with the kind of dual drafting system where, yeah, I really want this card, but I'm not so fussed on this ability, or vice versa. It's just a brilliant synergy of mechanisms. And again, I love that degree of strategy that these cards, add into the game. It's a very good touch. Something I didn't mention is at the end of the game, the 4 cards that are remaining in front of you actually score half the points, which adds even more weight to your, on your shoulders, because you might think, what, I really want to get the maximum benefit from this one. Bearing in mind that I'm going to have these 4 which are only going to score half points, therefore I'm not so fussed about them, but maybe there is still a lot I can do. But it's all about pacing yourself into getting the maximum output from each of those cards. I also thought that it was a brilliant touch that you can use these helpers completely freely, and it doesn't take up your turn or anything like that. It's a nice free-flowing movement to take, or action to take. If you wanted to maybe take a performance action, you could say, yeah, I want to maybe buy the card first and spend 2 coins for doing that. If I had another helper, when I draft the die, I could flip it to the reverse side, and so on. And yeah, you're only tying them up for the whole round and you're not blocking anybody, but I just like the way that it doesn't convolute the game at all, and you can use them in a free-flowing fashion. And it just means that you really want to start unlocking more and more of these cylinders to add more mitigation to your turns, because they're all useful. And I love the way that all the different squares here you want, because money again is tight, and points of course are going to be great. You want your more performance cards, you want the wild gems, and you also want the helpers. So everything is kind of appetizing and appealing here. And I always like it when you have that buffet of options to go for. The game allows you to pull off some massively satisfying turns. You can very meticulously plan turn after turn after turn to give those big moves. Maybe you start acquiring all the best cards. At the same time, you might need all the gems to get the maximum output from those cards. So you're going to need to, plan to collect all the gems. You're going to need to plan to get all the cards. You're going to need all the tents, and then you need a big performance. And if you do that, you can activate all those cards at once and pretty much fly around the board when it comes to getting victory points and when it comes to getting cash income. So yeah, I love that pacing. Do you want to just activate one tent now, or are you going to store up all your actions and play really meticulously and manage your finances delicately, all in order to get that massive turn and to play as efficiently as you can by getting, 5 cards activated with a single dice draft. The fact that there is only 3 rounds in the game and ultimately only 12 dice drafts through the entire duration, it makes things feel very tight, and it means there's a very small margin for error, and it makes each turn feel significant. So again, that weighting of the decisions you're making are just amplified because of that, and it also means that the game plays pretty succinctly. You can get a 2-player game of this done in probably about 60 to 75 minutes, which is massively impressive considering the depth of decisions and strategy that this one entails. And yeah, very little downtime as well, because the actions in their own right are pretty snappy. Yeah, there might be a little bit of pre-planning at times, but that is where the crunchiness comes into play. So yeah, in terms of engagement, it is right up there. And also the scalability works fantastically. I played this 2 players the other day, and I also played it 4 players maybe last week, and neither player count meant the game outstayed its welcome at all. And it just means that maybe the card row is going to get messed with a bit more, and there's going to be more competition to draft the cards that you want. But yeah, it scales perfectly well at that 1 to 4 player count. Interaction isn't a massive part of the game. However, you are going to be passively messing with each other, maybe grabbing the tents before other people do. Of course, the competition for the performance is quite hotly contested, because if somebody wants to do a modest performance here, somebody jumps up to the 4th spot, activates one of their performance cards, it means that somebody else is going to have to go higher than that, because you cannot actually share a spot. So I did like the way that works, and adds a bit more competition. The same goes to drafting the cards that you want. If there's a very specific card you're after and it gets grabbed up, that's just something you're going to have to roll with the punches for. And of course, I suppose the main thing is trying to get that best performance to grab the perfect pairing of card and worker placement spot available to you. I'm generally happy with the production of the game. I think it looks really nice when it's on the table, that dark background with all the popping neon colours. It looks really cool and it looks different. There's nothing else that's out there that quite has the aesthetic appeal that this one does. There are a few minor issues when it comes to colour blindness. Like, for example, it's quite hard to differentiate the different colours of tiles and the gems as well if you do suffer with a colour deficiency. And the tiles themselves aren't the best of qualities, but I know, in fact, I think this game is pretty affordable now. But yeah, generally everything works as it should. I've got no issues in terms of the functionality, and yeah, generally happy with the overall production. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on The Magnificent. And you might think that this game is an absolute shoo-in for me to love it, because generally speaking, I love dice drafting Euros. However, that does mean that the the scrutiny that I put on these games is so much higher because it has so much competition within my own personal collection. But despite that, this game completely blew me away. I thought this game is fantastic, absolutely brilliant. I love the way all the different facets of the game come together. I like that the personal player board part. It's not just simple, your standard Tetromino stuff that you're looking for, trying to cover up bonuses and things. Yes, it does have that part of the game, but the way it harmonizes with the performance cards, the management of your funds when it comes to drafting dice, not only for powerful actions, but the fact that you have to pay for them. And if you can't, you're going to suffer more and more negative points as the rounds progress. I love the competition to get the new cards. And I think my favourite part of the game is the strategy element of how are you going to resolve these cards? What order are you going to do them? When is the right time to pay them out? Which ones are we going to hold back to score half points for at the end of the game? Which bonuses do I want to exploit the most? And which ones do I want to, keep, and which ones do I want to pass on? That is just such a genius part of the game, which just, injects such a huge degree of forward planning into it. And considering this game is only boiled down into 3 actions, it is remarkably easy to explain and has a ton of depth, strategy, and just crunchiness of exactly what I'm looking for in this style of Euro. So yeah, could not recommend this one enough. It definitely holds its own against some of the heavy hitters when it comes to this genre. This is definitely up there with games such as Signorie, Coimbra, Trismegistus. This is definitely up there with those for me, which is the highest degree of praise that I can give a game. So yeah, if you love dice drafting, and especially when you can play one in an hour to an hour and a half, it does not get much better than The Magnificent. An absolute triumph for me.